for Life and Money Matters with the Success Guys, Mike Hill and Renee Guerra. Changing lives one day and $1 at a time.
Welcome, KBEC listeners. I'm Jim Phillips. In studio with me today is the illustrious Renee Guerra and the always insightful maroon-dressed Mike Hill. The man with the Texas A&M outfit. You gotta love it today. We are here to talk about life and money matters and try and bring to your life a little bit of organization and hopefully into your bank account maybe a little bit more money or insight in terms of how you manage those two parts of your wonderful life. As always, we would love to have your calls here at the station, 972-923-1390 or 972-938-1391 or on the Metro line, 972-938-1390. We are going to talk today a little bit about topic we talked about last week, habits, and how we take those habits and continue to improve upon them, build them into our everyday daily life. Say that 5 times fast. It's kind of a rough deal there. I'm stepping on my tongue this afternoon. And then also to that, try and go back and revisit some of the topics we talked with Jack Canfield, trying to figure out what how we set different goals. So, guys, how are we doing today? Renee?
I'm doing fantastic. What a gorgeous day today. And too bad it may rain tomorrow. But, you have to set your sights on it and say, hey, it's going to be a good day whether it rains or not, right? You got to look at it the positive way.
I like that. Mike, can bring the positive to the weather, buddy.
The life coach to always get us off on the right life spark here. And when A&M, by the way, comes out with a Tommy Bahama maroon shirt like what you're wearing right now.
You're into it?
Definitely. It's a Christmas list. No, just real excited to start the day. Having a great weekend so far. Easter Sunday, can't ask for better. I am going to have my 4 nieces that are all under the age of 10 with my 2 daughters this weekend. So I'm praying literally that it doesn't rain. Or we're doing we're going to be doing some egg hunting indoors. Who knows? So.
It's fantastic. Well, you got to do it wherever you can do it. Hey, I'm going to start us off, guys. Last Wednesday, I had a young lady walk in here, and she was here to pay her bill. And advertiser at KBC, and we appreciate her paying her bill, but she brought up something to me, and I think it's something that we need to kind of talk about in general. She asked, life or money, which one matters most? Renee? You get the first curveball, buddy.
Oh, that's great. I love that question, Liz. Whether it's life or money is the most important piece. And really, to me, it depends on the individual. You have some individuals that are chasing those big dollars. But, I was talking to a friend of mine last week, and one of the things, he's a very successful coach, lives out in California. One of the things he said is that when you're living your passion and you find a thing that you want to do and you do it with the gratitude of giving to others, then the money will flow to you much easier and faster. So it's like the law of attraction that Jack kind of mentioned a couple of weeks ago. You attract what you put out into the world. But, for me, life is the most important piece of it. Money does make it easier for you to go out and spend it and find things and buy things and to invest it, as Mike will tell you here in a few minutes. But, we all have this balance that we want to be happy. And I was watching a video the other night, and I'm sorry I can't think of the name of the show, but it talks about happiness, that you can be happy. These individuals were losing everything they had filed bankruptcy, and one of the guys said, but I lost everything, but you know what? I was still happy. So life to him was important. He had lost everything. So, I think it depends on the listener. What do they want to define? But that's a great question. And for me, it would be life to be able to enjoy it and do the things that I want to do and still have the comfort of having the security of money on the side and not have to worry about it.
Mike, let me throw you then kind of the slider instead of the curveball. If it is about life, then how do we take the money portion of that equation in our life, that foundation, and how do we take money and how do we manage it? How do we turn it into one of those subjects that is controllable, I guess, in our life if you don't like management?
Absolutely, and I agree 1,000% with Renee. Life definitely comes first. I think where money comes into the equation is my big belief is money and proper management of money during retirement or even when you're working buys you time, doesn't buy you life. We are all like a milk carton. We all have an expiration date. We just don't know what that expiration date is.
That's a great line.
You know, some of us it's longer, some of it's shorter. I've never had a client's widow come into my office and say, man, if he only had earned enough more money the last 5 or 6 years of his life. It's always, I wish I had more time with him. So what I'm getting back to is money absolutely buys you time, and proper budgeting of that money, setting up a budget, and we talked about this time and time again, paying yourself 10% first, getting to where maybe you're paying yourself 20% will buy you time. And what I mean by that is retiring earlier to maybe chase after those dreams that you've been putting off, you know, or maybe chasing after those dreams to build a hobby and now you're not having to work 50 hours a week, you work 40. That's what money buys you. It's time to help you achieve those goals in your life. That's my opinion.
Renee, where does money get in the way?
Well, I think, too, when I mentioned that friend of mine, Mike just alluded to this about having a lot of friends. But the other thing is the love of money is what gets people stuck. So, you know, when you talk about that, people have this vision of having all this money and, you know, just rolling to them and getting all this money in the mail, so to speak. But it's the love of money. When you think about that, that's what makes it... I've heard people say it all the time. That's the evil piece of that. If you just fall in love with the money, that's what makes it tough and difficult for people, because it seems the more you love the money, the more it draws away from you.
So from that standpoint, we've established up front, we want life to be the focal point of what we're doing and everything that we do. We talked a little bit now about habits. How do we take these habits that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks, and how do we ingrain those into our everyday life? I know Jack Canfield gave us a couple of tips in terms of developing mentors and certain situations. Why don't you take us through that process, Renee, of what it takes to make a habit actually part of your everyday life?
Well, first is identifying one of the habits that is limiting you. And one of the things that you can do is developing and eliminating old habits is one of the fastest and simple ways to create more time in your life. So basically, you're going to identify the habits that you wish to eliminate. So in other words, it's time to identify new habits to put in place so that you're moving toward your life rather than away from your old one. Because people, when they start seeing that they're changing their habits, they think that they're deprived. This mind says, oh, I can't watch TV anymore. I can't eat all these hamburgers and French fries. But if you want to get in better health, you start eating the foods that nourish your body, the things that make you feel better. There's days that I'll eat a hamburger and just feel pretty awful that evening and say, why do I keep eating a hamburger and French fries when I really want to continue to eat healthy? So my goal is to change that habit and say, okay, I don't have to have that burger and fries, and have my mind tell me that it's okay, that when I see the pounds start shedding off and dropping off, then I know that I've changed that habit. You know, Mike mentioned about last week about a habit where he was having to drive to the bank every night because he was making a deposit. So people get into, and I like that habit because it's kind of like he was just driving. You remember you said the car just kind of took you where you need to go. Well, I'd like the listeners to understand is that those habits are the ones that you don't even consciously are aware about. You just start doing these habits, and until somebody can identify or help you, or you reach out to your spouse or a friend and you say, hey, what habits do you see that are limiting myself? And they may say, hey, you just kind of do this. You can come home, watch TV at night, and you eat these fatty foods. And it helps identify that. So you can't kill the messenger on that when someone's trying to help you.
You know, another listener this week sent us an email. Her name was Karen, and she was from Midlothian. She came back and she said, I understand the 30 days to get a habit ingrained into your life. And she said, you know, I've gone through the process. I've done it 2 or 3 times, and invariably I get to the 12th day or 15th day, and something comes up, and I get off track. How do you get them back on track?
Just to recognize that they are off track. And for me, when I do get off track, and I'm not immune to that, just like everybody else, is that you get back on track and not beat yourself up where you build these stories and start tearing yourself down. You say, you know, I'm worthless. I'm not any good at it. I knew I couldn't stick with it. You know, it's just like Lent. Some individuals may be trying to give up some things for Lent recently, right? So
one of us fell off the bandwagon twice on the Diet Dr. Peppers, although they never did get Mexican food.
Oh, okay, right? There you go.
Wow.
But
I know.
The beautiful thing is, guys, is that you can get back on track. There's no reason to beat yourself up and to make a commitment. You're making a commitment to yourself. And that's really big. That's the key, is when you look at yourself in the mirror at night and say, okay, can I make this commitment to not drink the Diet Dr. Peppers or give up the French fries and the burgers and pizzas and those types of things during a certain time of year? That's what's key. And so also not to beat yourself up. And I think Jack Canfield alluded to that. When you fall off the track on your goals, is that you can easily get back on them. And you're off track, just to make a statement, you're off track more than you're on track on your goals, and that you can always get back on track and reach that goal.
Well, that's one of the things, too, that Mike and I talked about a little bit. You know, if you can't make all 5 goals, be happy making 2 and then work toward getting 3. You know,
and I didn't mean to interrupt, Jim, but I had a real quick thought when Renee was talking that. For those of us that didn't listen last week, I had the father that was a financial advisor, went off to college thinking I'm all worry-free, and I had to wait tables to pay rent, et cetera, et cetera. And what he told me is, Michael, pay yourself 10% first. I'm like, oh, Dad, whatever. I get paid in cash. How do I do that? And he goes, you're going to go to the nightly deposit and put your cash in the envelope. Now, make sure it's not a bad part of town or something like that where you're doing that deposit. And it did become a habit. And the thing that I would like to challenge to the listeners, because you have access to Renee, this is something that I was just thinking he was saying, that is, if I didn't have that mentor or accountability buddy or whatever we call it out there making, and granted, this is also the man that wrote the checks for some of my tuition, so I definitely had to do something there. But what I would like to ask Renee, or ask the listeners, what is your barrier to starting a good habit? Because I know some men, especially, we have these egos. We don't need any help. I can lift this 150-pound rock out of the way, and then we break our back or whatever. My challenge to the listener, because I am very guilty of that. I need somebody to hold me accountable, but I'm sitting there thinking, what are some of the barriers to start that stops me from starting a budget? What are some of the barriers from stopping you from going out and losing that weight? Call in, ask. Renee may not have the question today. I may not have the answer for those questions today, but that's what I'm thinking. I'd really like to hear from the listeners and what is their barrier to starting good habits. Sure. And let's maybe conquer some of these. Let's give real life examples. Anyway, just a thought.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, if you don't start someplace, you're not going to ever get off the starting line. You know, you're stuck there day in and day out. Mike, we talked a little bit last week about 10 habits to develop for financial strategy. Why don't you take us through a couple of those and highlight some things that you think are important for our listeners to really understand when it comes to putting a financial plan together and understanding that habit side of that.
Well, last week we talked about there's 10 habits to develop a financial stability for success. And if you want to have a copy of these, call the station or email the station at info@successguys, I believe is it. And then we could sit there and we can have these emailed to you. You could click and get into them. But last week we talked about making savings automatic. That's where the story of doing my own personal story of doing the nightly deposit. Another one I would say is definitely keep your family secure. I've seen this time and time again. The number one reason for bankruptcy in the United States isn't because I bought a bad mortgage. That's a big one. Or I bought too much house that I could live in, or I don't pay my debts on time. It's actually long-term disability. Wow. Most people don't realize just a 1-week stay in a hospital will bankrupt 90% of Americans in the United States. So, well, Mike, I got health insurance, I got this. You may have a 20% copay after the first $50,000 on your policy. My point is really make sure if you are the sole breadwinner of a family that you have some kind of cheap disability insurance. Or if you can't do that, make sure your beneficiaries are listed correctly on your forms. We were talking about it right before the show. I had no idea. I didn't know that Thomas Kincaid, the famous painter, passed away.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Friday. That's my my parents' favorite. I love his paintings. Love his paintings. But anyway, and that just brought to mind, I can't tell you how many times I've seen where people, for example, have an IRA account and they'll just have estate written as their beneficiary. Well, if that happens, the estate, we've talked about this before, doesn't have a lifetime. What happens is the IRS will make your beneficiaries, your wife, your kids, take a lump sum upon your death. List your beneficiaries, especially on retirement accounts, by name, by Social Security. Have 3 or 4 listed. Have your contingents listed. That's little things that you could do from beyond the grave to take care of your family. That's a step to 10 habits to developing financial.
So the 2 headlines are, 1, make sure that you've got adequate insurance to cover your needs if a catastrophe hits. And 2, make sure that on all of your policies that you do have, that you've got some kind of defined beneficiary for each one of those?
Well, because life insurance bypasses probate tax. You don't have to go to the city court and everybody see who you're leaving your money to. The life insurance company pays you to beneficiaries directly upon your death. We just talked about milk and how we all have this expiration date. Nobody wants to think about it. But why not ensure when that expiration date comes that your family is okay? Premature death happens all the time, unfortunately. We don't know. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow.
Sure. Hey, when we get back, listeners, we want to get into a topic that Renee and I talked about last week, and we've kind of touched on a couple of times, and that's this whole concept of a mastermind concept, as well as establishing an accountability partner and identifying those goals in habits in your life that are really going to make a difference. We'll be back here in a couple of seconds, and appreciate you listening. Please give us a call at 972-923-1390. We'd love to hear about your successes or your situations in life where you feel like you need a little help, and we'll be back in a minute. Oh, where's Ken Roberts when I need him? I don't remember the name of that song. You guys know? Billy Idol. Oh, white baby. Good job, guys.
That's couple skate only music right there.
Thank you for bailing me out on that one.
Good song. I like that one.
I was going to miss that one coming in. So that's Saturday afternoons and Saturday mornings around KBEC are meant to be 1, informative, 2, lighthearted, 3, we always want to make sure that our listeners are getting a little bit different sound to KBEC.
Yeah.
So these little intros and bumpers that we do, or who knows what you're going to get. So, with that in mind, I'm completely off topic and completely lost here, and trying to figure out which way to get back onto my own habits and my own focus on life. Renee, why don't you get us back into good habits and go over the whole process to establish some good habits in our lives?
Sounds good. Well, one of the things that the listeners can do, and I challenge them to do this, is to find an accountability partner. We talked briefly about that last week, and what I mean by accountability partner is find someone that you can talk to on a daily basis, whether it can be in the morning to go over the 5 steps or the 5 things that you want to accomplish that day. So in other words, if you're going to, whatever that looks like as far as reaching your breakthrough goal or the goal that you have that you're trying to succeed. In other words, you'll call that accountability partner. Let's say I'll call Mike, I'll call you every morning and say, Mike, what are the top 5 things that you're going to get done today? And then I'll give you the 5 things that I'm going to get done. And you want to make that conversation very quickly. You don't want to turn into an hour to 2-hour conversation. You want to make it specific and to the point. So when I call you on, let's say we had the discussion on Monday, and I talk to you on Tuesday, I'll say, okay, Mike, how many of those 5 things did you get done? So the whole point is, if you start backtracking and say, well, I just got too busy and life just, I couldn't get this done and that done and this done. So I'm going to challenge you on that and say, okay, Mike, what's the penalty or what's the punishment that you will do if you don't complete those 5 one of those 5 things? Now,
I love the penalty aspect. We've all had the high school coach that said, hit the bleachers because you're 10 minutes late to practice. I love that.
Now, I will say, and it's true, what you want to do is don't go to your best friend, because that means that they may not hold you accountable. So I was looking through some articles, and sometimes they say you can find someone that knows you very well, that you can do that. But the idea is to find someone that will call you on your excuses. And because really, you're finding an accountability partner to better yourself. Okay?
Excuses are easy, too, though. I mean, we all can come up with excuses. We need that person that's going to kick us in the tail and say, hey, you're caught, you're done, call me back, and come up with a deal.
Well, too, and it could be a habit where you come up with excuses all the time, and that's a habit where you say, I don't have time. I have so many people that say I don't have time. When I get at them to write down what they do on a daily basis, they look back at that list. You really need to have them look at it, and I challenge listeners to do this, to write down what you do on a daily basis, and to determine when you have time. I have people say, I don't have time to read a book. So you don't have time to read a book for 20 minutes a day? So,
they chose how to spend their time in a way that said, hey, I'm not going to dedicate 20 minutes to reading a book.
Well, exactly. The best invention ever with me right now is, and I love listening to the radio in the morning, is I love listening to the flea market on my way into work sometimes.
Good plug there for KBC. Thank you.
But one of the best things ever is I was the same way. I don't have time to read the book. I have this. I have a lot of successful and a lot of coaching and a lot of teaching strategy books that I've read, but eventually it gets to where it's almost overload. Best thing thing ever was you can go down and download podcasts, and I know, oh my gosh, you click on iTunes, you type in Success Book, about 1,000 of them will come up, Jack Canfield's, for example, and you can get the ones that are read to you through the podcast or when you purchase. I plug it into my car. $2.99 at Best Buy for the Jack, and I use that 30 minutes in my drive into my office every morning as a productive thing every morning. I mean, I love listening to sports. Opening day was Friday. It's great, but let's lose the drive in as a productive part of my day.
Well, you hit it right on the head, and sure. We have this conversation at the station all the time. Radio stations are notorious for being time suckers. We lose so much time talking about so much peripheral stuff. And so consequently, I've really tried to teach every person here, take 5 minutes, and this is your 5 minutes to do what task, And every morning at 8:06, doesn't matter, 9:02. Our listeners know at 8 o'clock we're playing X amount of music. At 8:15 we're playing X amount of commercials. At 9 o'clock, and there's a reason we do that. The whole idea of a program is to get into that mode or into that level of repetition so that you can find the time. Not being able to find the time, I think, is one of the cheapest excuses in life and one of the quickest ones that you can break, because the time really does exist if you really want to get the job done.
Sure. I mean, I got a great quote that I think that would kind of sum it up, is that we can only become something new by ceasing to be something old. And that's from Joan Anderson from A Weekend to Change Your Life. We definitely have to change the way our old habits are. If you want to come up, I kind of take it as like a butterfly in the cocoon when they turn in from the caterpillar into this beautiful butterfly. We have that opportunity to change ourselves. And it's just a matter of looking deep inside of us and looking at those habits and saying, how am I holding myself back? Because that shows up in every part of your life. Once you start making excuses and looking at things like that, it affects all 7 areas of your life when you start looking at those areas, which would be your financial, your personal, your relationships, your career and business, contribution and legacy, fun time and recreation, and health. So anytime we say, I don't have time to save my money, I don't have time to work out, I don't have time for recreation. You see where I'm going with that? So the listeners can see it affects every part of their life when you start doing those habits.
I'm going to piggyback on what Renee said. I feel that in a large part, that's my job. I'm not going to be, when clients come into my office, I am very blessed that 90, I'm not going to say 100% of my clients have become friends and friends have become clients. It's a great relationship we have, but I still, when we're in my office, this is business. This is about your retirement planning. This is about your college money. And to hold people accountable, for example, those that have listened to my past radio shows that know me or are clients in the area know that I only believe in being 30, 20, 40% total in the market anyway, and have other things in the stock market, other things in alternative assets that produce income, not just the stock market. Well, just last week, I had so many calls from people saying, well, do we get out now? And yes, I started, money that I did have in the market, I started taking some off the table. And if the market goes up to 14,000, listeners could call up next week and say, Mike was wrong. I'm not making a call on the market. But my point is that was my accountability when people came into my office. Listen, this is what we said we were going to do. It's run up. We need to take some off the table, lock in some of the profits. Now we need to put it in things that are more fixed. This is the plan that we laid out, just like what Renee does when they come in his office. This is the plan that we laid out. By gosh, we're going to stick to it. Good, bad, or indifferent, this is what we're sticking to, and it's my job and Renee's job to keep them to that.
I think you bring up a good point. That is, you make the plan, you work the plan, and then you evaluate the plan. And if you take it in that basic step 1, 2, and 3, then you'll be able to have a good resource to come back and figure out what you've done and where you've gone. So, Renee, talk to me a little bit. We talked about habits. We talked about where we want to do. I don't get this mastermind concept. Help explain that to me and make me, better educated.
Okay. Well, mastermind group it's a step further than accountability partner. That's someone you want to talk to on a daily basis that can keep you focused on your goals. And the mastermind group It's also in Jack's Success Principles book, Jack Canfield, on how you can set up a mastermind group. But what it is basically you're looking for 5 to 6 people that are above you, that are earning potentially more than you, or further along in their career, so you can have a mentor, like Mike had mentioned earlier about having a mentor. And what you do is you meet on a bi-weekly basis, and the first thing you do is you talk about your wins. What are the good successes that you have? The meeting's an hour long. So you break up those 6 individuals into whether they get 8 minutes to talk about the successes, the things that they're working on, and then the challenges that they're having. And what you do is you basically open up the meeting for input from all other team members. So whatever challenges that you're having in your life, whether it could be something you're trying to have some financial challenges, or you're trying to build some relationships. Let's say Mike and Jim, you're on my account, you're on my mastermind group. So I'll throw out there and say, hey guys, I'm just having a real hard time of staying focused, and here's what's going on with me. I just have a tendency to start a project and not get it done. And you guys may come back and say, okay, Renee, what exactly are you doing? Here's what I do to help myself. Here's how I go through focus. And then Jim, you may come up with another idea and say, hey, here's some of the things I do. So I take all the input and weed through that information and say, hey, okay, guys, this is how you can help me accomplish my goals. But it's always goal specific. I want to talk about the mastermind group. It's always goal specific. Is what you're trying to create. So for me, is to get more clients, or to have some CDs created. So for my mastermind group, I'll say, does anybody know anybody out there that has a connection to creating some CD material? And they may have a contact and say, here's someone that you can call. So the concept of a mastermind group then is this is your board of directors. Exactly. Similar lines of anybody, then they're supporting you in what you're trying to accomplish as far as your goals. So you meet every 2 weeks for an hour. So my mastermind group, we meet at 7:30. Every other Sunday. So every other Sunday, there's 6 of us on a call, and then each person, you'll have a leader, and each person will rotate their leader out each time. And you also have a vindication, when someone will say something about the meeting, about how we have the... How did you find those 5 people to be part of your group? For me, it was through the Breakthrough to Success program, where I participated with Jack in 2010, and so our group is pretty much stuck together, except for a couple. We invited 2 people. How does a KBEC listener begin to formulate and find 5 or 6 people to become part of their quote-unquote mastermind group? Great question. And what you can do, you don't necessarily have to go to Breakthrough to Success. You can start looking at some people that you really admire and mentor, that you want to have part of you that are successful. So in other words, you can get a list of individuals. Let's say Jim, someone may say, okay, I may want to get a radio station going. I want to have him in my mastermind group because he may have the ins and outs. So they'll call you. They can basically call other people and say, would you be interested in being in my mastermind group, or would you be interested in being my mentor? But that's how you can start that, is get a list of individuals that you admire and that are successful, and that you want to be in your group that'll hold you accountable. Because there's also... Let's go over real quick one more time then the qualifications for those people before you go out and talk to them. Ideally, you would look at somebody that you admire, a mentor that you would want to have, somebody that can provide you a point of view that is probably in a different vein than what you have day in and day out around you. Exactly. And that they provide... And it's all the feedback is in a loving manner. Sure. So it's not to degrade anybody or to make any kind of judgment. So what you're trying to do is help that individual in the mastermind group to succeed and to go another higher level and to do things that stretch them. So at the end of their 8-minute or 10-minute conversation, the leader will say, okay, Jim, what are you going to do within the next 2 weeks that's going to stretch you? Gotcha. So you always want to walk away with that. Mike, I'm putting you on the spot here because, and you and I are both going to get put on the spot here. I have a mentor, okay, in my personal life. Do you happen to have a mentor in yours?
Absolutely. I can't. I'm a very big believer, i.e. why I've coached for 17 years now, youth sports. I'm a big believer in giving back and also having a mentor and being a mentee. I'm both. I'm a mentor to kids on the side. I also help some kids with youth football camps, but I'm also have a mentor for myself.
Okay. Does Hill & Associates have a board of directors?
Absolutely. Right now, my mentor happens to be stationed in Iowa. He's a guy that I have a call with once a week.
But is your mentor part of your board of directors for Hill & Associates?
Absolutely.
He
He's on there. He's actually gone over my key man insurance policies with me. If something was to happen to me, he's actually one of the people that I want my wife to contact as far as what we need to do with my life insurance. I also have an assistant that's there, but my wife knows where all my life insurance is. That's the person that can explain it better to her than any. And then, Jim, what about your mentor situation? What do you have?
I got a mentor.
Throw it right back at you.
I know, exactly. I can tell you that I do have the mentor, but as far as a board of directors, I'm negligent in that. And it's funny because it was one of those things when my wife and I first got involved in the radio station that, we went to our lawyer, we went to our banker, we went to our accountant, we went to our friends, we talked to all these different people. And the overlying comment was, well, Jim, you're going to have some group that you can rely on that can give you feedback. And I've identified 2 or 3 of those people. And early on in the process, I said, yeah, we'll do this. But come July when we celebrate the first year being here, I need to have that board of directors meeting, and I need to do it on a quarterly basis, or as Renee was saying, on a 2-week basis.
And I didn't mean to interrupt, Renee, but you hit upon something that is very, very important to me. And listeners, I didn't tell him to ask this, but this is absolutely. The second meeting that I have with the client, once they become with the client, we have what they call a lifetime checklist. And on that checklist, who's the name of the person that put your will together? Who's your CPA? Who's your tax preparer if you don't have a CPA? Who is your banker? Who also did your life insurance? I'm not asking all these things to go out and go, I'm going to do your life insurance now. No. But I am the key point person. I'm your financial coach. I'm the one that has to delegate, kind of like in football. You have the head coach and you have offensive coordinator, defense. I'm the person that's got to delegate to that life insurance person. This is how a spouse wants it paid. This is how they need to do this. That's your board of directors on your financial life. And if those people in your life don't have each other's phone number, call me or call them directly and make up your own list. I have a checklist for everyone that comes in my office with these names, and we get a copy to each one of those professionals. So when I call and they have their life insurance kick in, I'm not a stranger to them. So,
I'm going to jump on that one big time. No, I'm going to jump on that one time even bigger. At age 22, if you're under the age of 22, if you're still in college or in school, do not listen to this. But if you're an adult, okay, there's nothing wrong with having cheat sheets, okay? And the cheat sheet should have all of those key pertinent people on one page that have to be contacted in a case of an emergency. Your doctor, your dentist, your accountant, your banker, your parents, whoever it is. And the way I often thought about this is, if I couldn't say another word from this moment forward in my life, what would my wife and what would my children do? Mm-hmm. And who would they contact?
I'll do you one better. You just did it. That's exactly, because I get the couple. I'm right there with you. I don't have to do this. Now, if I call my CPA, if I call my life insurance guy, he might call me and tell me I need to buy more. It's the last thing I want to do. I get all that. What you do, and I've learned this from Renee, actually, from me listening to him on the show, do a scenario. Go to your wife today. You have your family there. It's Easter. Or go do it next weekend. Honey, today, you may be happy. Depends if you're in a fight or not. Today, we're going to act like I'm gone. I want you to show me right now, write down on a piece of paper, where to contact, who our life insurance is with, where all of our important papers are. Write it all down. Do a test. You do fire drills. Mm-hmm. Okay, you're more likely to die than have a fire in your house. Let's do a death drill. I know it sounds morbid, and then the husband or the wife, whoever's in control of most of those papers, cannot say a word. You're done. Right. I know it sounds hokey. I've done it in my house.
Have you really?
And it opens your eyes big time. Big time.
Well, I need to do that because, my wife and I went through the loss of my dad last year, and he had a lengthy battle with cancer. It was difficult to go through. But I got to tell you, in the end, the man had everything planned so well in life that I got spoiled. It got to the point where, what color roses do you want on the casket? And 2 days later, the CPA calls me up and says, this, and this have been done. You need to sign this, and this paperwork, and that was it. And, to that end, people need to think about these things, and it's not necessarily a happy habit, but, we're at the point where you got to do that. So, Renee, you had something to chime in here?
Yes. One of the things that, when Mike was talking about when having all that information, that's just so turnkey. All those questions about who the beneficiary is and all that information about when you die, and that can also be a habit where you start having all that information just at hand, where you start documenting everything that you did. And I'm going to drill it down even further. Someone that cleans your house, cleans your yard, all that information, just have it down on a piece of paper where you start keeping all that stuff filed up. It makes it so much easier for my wife and I, Trish and I, when I started doing stuff like that. And I really saw that at a corporate side when I worked at Dr. Pepper. I always had to remind the employees to change their beneficiary. It was so interesting to see how many employees did not have a beneficiary on their paperwork. So That's where I started my habit of that.
Good deal. Hey, listeners, when we come back here, please give us a call, 972-923-1390 or 972-938-1390. We want to hear about some of your good habits, your bad habits, those things that you've been able to overcome in your life, and maybe we can provide you a little bit of guidance and help in terms of how to make it a better place for you. We'll be back here in a minute.
This is your classic Texas station, 1390.
All 80s weekend. Cyndi Lauper, girls just want to have fun. Gotta love it, gotta love it, gotta love it.
That's funny.
All right, Mike. You were, Renee, right after break, you were mentioning something about Masterminders that you wanted to give out to the listeners?
Yes, I'd like to have the listeners, if they could, email info@kbec.com. I can give them that information on how to create a mastermind group, or even just some information on an accountability partner, because that really would help them understand on how they can start putting that foot forward, one step in front of the other, and also just for their financial goals and everything else in their life. It would really help them out. So please call, or actually email at info@kbec.com, and I can give you some information on mastermind groups and accountability partners.
Fantastic.
I'm chomping at the bit because I got to get this out to the listeners.
Go for it.
One thing I really want to get across and I'm picking on men today, and I don't mean to be, but as the listeners may or may not know, I have 3 sisters and 6 nieces and 2 daughters. So granted, I'm surrounded by estrogen, but men, please, I cannot stress this enough. If you're the one that has normally been handling, in most cases it has been in my experience, with baby boomer generation and younger, is that if you're the one that handled the life insurance, or you're the one that contacted the CPA in your marriage, please, please, please get that across to your wife. Because what will happen, and I've seen this in my office, I've been very fortunate or unfortunate to have to deal with this many times and help widows get through it. And like Jim's father, sometimes they're really easy, sometimes they're not. The one thing I got to get across is women, and I'm not trying to jump on Renee's, but in my experience, women feel that they were loved when they are more taken care of. I don't mean that in a sexist way. Like if you passed away and your life is in a disarray when you passed away, and your wife's having to go through all these paperwork while she's grieving, they don't know how to turn up any of that, there's going to be a lot of frustration there, guys. Don't do that to your spouse. Make sure they know these contexts. Flowers are great. We all need to send our wives flowers, but we also need to make sure that they know that they are taken care of if something happens to us, guys. So anyway, I had to get that out there.
No, very good point. It makes a whole lot of sense.
Need to be taken care of. I mean, in the event of our death, I want everything to be taken care of.
Sure. All right, so we talked a little bit about habits. We talked about this whole concept of mastermind. Mike, we're at the end of the day, buddy. We got 5 things that we want to talk to from a financial standpoint. We want to talk to what we've got to do right now. Somebody's got to make an action plan. They got to get their budget in line. They got to get their money in place. Where and what do we do?
All right. Here's the 5 financial questions to ask yourself. We went over one of them last week, and I'm going to go quick through them. 5 financial questions to ask yourself right now or anytime. First one is, do you have an exit strategy for your investments? We talked about it last week. If you don't know what exit strategy is, you need to call our office, or you need to call somebody that you're working with right now, and that's the exact question you have for them. Because if they don't know, something's wrong there. Number 2, do you have enough cash reserve? If you don't know if you have enough cash reserve, I would recommend anywhere between 3 to 6 months based on your budget, which is number 3. Do I have a spending plan in place? Do I have a spending budget in place? Well, I don't want to put a budget. I don't want to put things together. Under number 3, what I would tell your listeners is I would challenge them to exactly this. It's called a 1-month challenge. Every one of us knows more or less what we make in a month. Okay, you get paid weekly, you get paid bi-weekly. Add up all your net checks and see what you get paid in a month. You take 10% of that check and you're going to put it in a jar, or you're not going to spend it. What I mean by that is a 1-month challenge is, instead of doing the budget that you're just putting off that I think you should do, but if you want to do it the easy way, you make $3,000 a month. Right now, you're going to write your check for $300, and when that $2,700 is gone from your checking account, you're done. You're not buying anything. Well, Mike, what happens when my electricity gets turned off? Then you're going to have to make it 1-month challenge for the next challenge. But you need to take that money directly out of your check. Write the check to yourself. Put it there on the counter for 10% of whatever your paycheck is for 1 month. And if you are out of funds at the end of the month, you need to do it again. That's your budget.
You mentioned that the other day with your wife, and okay, honey, we get $300 to eat food on this year or this month, and first 2 weeks we're eating high on the hog, and the last 2 weeks you gotta like romaine noodles, and I hope you like peanut butter and jelly.
I didn't like it either. That meant no more Chick-fil-A going through there and getting yogurts and lemonade and all that when it came April 20th. But that challenge had to do with instead of finding out what your budget is, and another good source is mint.com. It can automatically download your checking information, so if you're really lazy, it's automatically done for you. But with that, I told people now, if your budget's $500, if you think it's $500, then put $500 in cash in your purse, or $100 in cash and have a jar for $400, and that's what you use for those restaurants. Because when that's gone, it's not like a debit card. It's real nice and easy. Let's just swipe it. So.
You know, as we develop the show, I just thought of something, guys, and I want us to do this, okay, in the next 3 or 4 weeks. I'd like each of us to go back and look at the web pages that we access that we would want our listeners to go to. You mentioned mint.com. Renee, you've mentioned a number of ones you've had. Let's do a show just simply based off of those web pages that are out there and available for people that can help them with their life issues, that can help them with their money issues, and then kind of give a pros and cons to each one of those web pages. What do you guys think? Good idea, bad idea?
I think it's a great idea, and I'd like to take it even a step further, because there's several videos that I've watched. And there's a spiritual leader, a guy named Wayne Dyer, and he has a new book called Wishes Fulfilled, and it's also a movie. But there's some really good movies that I think could really get listeners to move and start taking some action in their life.
Okay.
So I think
maybe it's web pages, maybe it's videos,
something like that.
Maybe those things in life that are outside of us to make that happen.
I'm having a Seinfeld moment, where they always wrapped up the show
right.
and they mentioned something that happened at the beginning. I'm kind of having that Seinfeld moment right now, because at the very beginning of the show, you said you had a customer come in and said, "What's more important, life or money?" Well, a book that I could suggest, or a movie, if you will, that hits it on the head is called The Ultimate Gift. A gentleman was left a lot of money from his uncle.
Seen that one.
And he had, I'm not going to give the whole movie away, but he had to go through all these life exercises, very bitter because he just didn't get the money in his pocket. Went through all the life exercises. You can kind of see where I'm going through there, but a very good illustration on having all the money in the world doesn't mean all the happiness in the world, or having the perfect job but no money to sit there and pay for the things that you want to accomplish in life. There's always a balance. But The Ultimate Gift's a great book, good website. Our good movie is out too. So.
It's an excellent movie. I remember watching that too, Mike, and it really just will grab your heartstrings, and also just look at the way this one particular individual looked at money.
Absolutely.
And we talked about that at the beginning of the show, where the love of money can be detriment to where the money actually is not attracted to you because you're just wanting so much of it. But that's a great show, and I like that.
Hey, Renee, what's the headline you want our listeners to walk away from today's show with? What's the one habit? What's the one thing that you would like to see them incorporate in their life between now and next week?
For the habit, I'd like to have the listeners for them to ask other people for feedback, because that seems to be kind of a tough deal for people to take feedback. So ask somebody, your family members, your spouse, someone else, and say, hey, how do you see myself limiting myself with habits? And then listen to what they say, and then really resonate that and soak it in and not be defensive about it, and see what you come up with, because it was actually a great exercise for me when I did that. I reached out to several friends that knew me, and then some people that I didn't think really knew me that well, and they were right on the money on some things, and I'm like, wow, they didn't know me. They knew me for maybe a year or two, but they had some really good feedback for me because it's just such a huge eye-opener for me to make those changes.
So the headline is, find a friend out there that's willing to give you some honest critique of your own habits.
Exactly.
Okay. Mike, what about you? What's the headline that you'd like to see our listeners do this week?
Well, I'd love to sit there and have them over the next week just list what their barrier to starting a good habit is. Renee gave great examples on how to start good habits and how to get over those barriers. I think the best one that he gave was the mentor. Well, I'll tell you one bit of advice that I could throw out there, and I had to learn it late in life, not earlier. I wish I would have learned this in my 20s. Is ask successful. You asked Jack Canfield to be on the show.
Sure.
There's not a lot of people in an audience that would ask somebody that charges a lot of zeros to do public speaking to come and talk to a radio station for our listeners. And I think that was great. And that's my point. If you go and talk to successful people and just be quiet, they want to tell you their story. They want to tell you how they became successful. There's reasons Sam Walton used to go up and he wrote all these books and he would talk to all of his employees. That's what I want the listeners to take away from next week is try to find that one mentor. You can always be more successful. If it's not in business, then maybe it's in marriage. Maybe it's in life. Maybe it's in just your own self-fulfillment. That's what I want them to take away. Use this starting of good habits this week to find your mastermind group, to find somebody that you can relay information from. That's what I'm challenging the listeners.
Well, and I like both of you because you're focusing in on the whole concept of life. And the only way that you can change your daily habits in life are to take it one step at a time, focus on those little things, and surround yourself with those people that can give you the honest criticism, critique, positive feedback to make those things happen and make those positive changes. So,
absolutely.
Going forward, gang, I can't emphasize this enough as listeners. We really want to answer the questions that you have out there in your life that are going on. So please drop us a line at info@kbec.com. Let us know what you're thinking about, what you're struggling with, how we can provide this 1 hour of time on a Saturday afternoon to help your life and improve your life. It's all about what you as listeners need us to provide you in terms of information and guidance. And I really would challenge you to use the expertise that Mike Hill has from a financial planner standpoint and Renee Guerra as a life coach. Utilize their skills, and hey, it's free. It's all you got to do is call in 972-923-1390, 972-938-1390, or drop us an email at info@kbec.com. We'd love to hear from you. Guys, anything else?
I'm sorry, Renee, I just want to throw this out real quick. Again, you can get this through my website, which is linked on KBEC's website, or you can get this by emailing KBC directly. But I have the white paper called 7 Income Strategies for an All-Weather Portfolio, mentioning it's going to rain tomorrow. I think we're still in a rocky situation. We have $15 trillion in debt. I want to throw it. It's free to the listeners. This is normally something that I used to charge for a couple of years ago. This is a white paper, which means it's about 10 to 12 pages on different asset classes besides stocks and bonds to generate income for you. The other thing I want to mention is I'm so proud of Navarra College. Christy over there is starting an adult education series, and it's going to do cooking. It's going to do Renee's going to be a part of it, but the class that I'm starting is April 26th, Thursday, and I'll put more word out there. We're going to be doing the speech that I'm going to be giving is presidential elections and how they affect the stock market. Very timely. You can only do it every 4 years, but very timely, and that's probably the biggest question I get from everybody is, what happens when XYZ is elected? Well, then if that's something that you're thinking about, this is a class you're going to want to attend on April 26th. So.
April 26th.
And that's at Navarra College here in Waxahachie.
Thursday, 6:30 p.m. So, Renee?
Well, I've reached out to her. I have some classes that I'll have. It'll be in a 2.5-hour class. I don't have the dates yet, but I'm looking forward to being out there at Navarro College. So hopefully I'll have some dates for the listeners here. But I just want to wish everybody a happy Easter and to really have a fantastic weekend and enjoy every bit of the time that you have with your family.
Thank you, listeners. Have a great day. We appreciate you. Have a great Easter.
You've been listening to Life and Money Matters with the Success Guys on 1390 KBEC. Mike Hill is a registered representative of and securities offered through Berthel Fisher and Company Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Hill & Associates Wealth Management Advisors is independent of BFCFS. The interpretations and organizations of these ideas are the confidential thoughts of Mike Hill and do not represent the opinions of Berthel Fisher and Company Financial Services.